Today we are going to talk about product recalls, which is a very important issue in supply chain risk management. So we have seen the supply chain risk, how several risks happen, and how they can be mitigated. But particularly in some issues such as food, processed food, particularly pet foods, and also in toys and children's toys, there is whenever there is some problem with the products, they have to be recalled because they are usually stored in the house and they may be used at a later point in time. So it is very important to inform the public, particularly people who have purchased it, and also recall them wherever they are, whether in the house, they are in the warehouse, and so on. One of the issues that faced in 2007 for a company called Mattel. Mattel is a toy company which is world's number one, which does Barbie dolls and others. Is based out of United States, and it outsources a lot of its toy production to China. It has a lot of employees, like 200 employees in Hong Kong, to basically oversee the management of the outsourcing arrangements with the various players in China. But still in 2007 there was it has to recall, and there was a lot of problems for Mattel. So taking Mattel's case, let's look at how product recalls can be handled in a supply chain risk management setting. Well, toys recalls the recalls happen in other this one, like there were cell phone batteries exploding, there were auto components misbehaving, and so on. So there were recalls by Toyota, recalls by Nokia, and other companies. So this product recalls is an important issue, and it has been rising because after the outsourcing. So we'll first look at what is the ecosystem of Mattel. In fact, we are going to map the ecosystem and then look at product recalls and what is the risk management in outsourced manufacturing. Now here we are outsourcing products which are of low value. In other words, they are not like TVs, or they are not like cell phones which cost hundreds of dollars. These are basically a Barbie doll may cost at the most $10. So, and also pet foods and others which are cheap items. But they are all outsourced. That's because of low cost resource availability in countries like China, India, and so on. So that how do you do the risk management in those areas? And then we'll conclude this lecture. So in low cost product supply chains such as food, toys, and many others, the lower tier suppliers may adulterate, contaminate, use banned materials which are cheaper options, etc., either being unaware of the dangers or deliberately to lower costs. Now, for example, one of the items that they use is, for example, they adulterate the beef with horse meat. They contaminate this because of lack of hygiene and stored facilities. So they store food outside without in non-temperature temperature environments, and they use lead paint, which is cheaper instead of leadless paint. So because these are all low cost, and they think nothing is going to happen. So how do lead players, in other words players who are basically outsourcing the so-called manufacturing of these low cost items to China, India, and so on, in long dispersed supply chains ensure that above issues do not occur? Do you suggest inspections? Is it communications? or supply chain visibility, the CEMEX way that we have seen in CEMEX way, it basically deals with all the suppliers and so on, collaboration, and what else? I mean, do you want to create a procurement platform where all the materials required for all the suppliers, all the tires is procured under contract by the metal itself? So the point here is that because of the low cost of the product, and people do not want to spend more time and use sophisticated IT platforms and so on. So the issue is, in such cases, what is the governance? How are you going to ensure that the products that are produced are safe, particularly to the children, to the animals, who cannot say once they get sick, they cannot even tell you that they are sick. So that's the basic learning in this particular case. Let's look at Mucho, the company profile of Mattel. It started in 1945. It has grown to become world's largest toy company. And Mattel is responsible for many of today's toys like Barbie, Tickle Me Elmo, and Hot Wheels, and so on. So Mattel sold products under license-based characters from Sesame Street, Barney, Walt Disney, Warner Brothers movies, and Harry Potter books. So you can see that the kind of brand based brand products that Mattel says. It's basically a top company in the world. In 2006, sales exceeded $5 billion, and in 2007, $6 billion. And most of Mattel's toy manufacturing is done through outsourcing, mainly in China. And about 65% of the toys are done in China. And in 2007, at the time of product recalls, Mattel was the world's largest toy maker. So in 2007, July is the time when the product recall, first recall was made, and because there were some problems, we'll look through those. So if you look at what is the Mattel ecosystem here, is the ecosystem consists of parents, because it is the parents who buy the toys, children, retailers, manufacturers, suppliers, and raw material suppliers, suppliers and suppliers, quality control at all the stakeholders, R&D at Mattel, at suppliers, governments, employees in China, Hong Kong, and USA, media, and other financial institutions. So you can see the stakeholders who are there in this. Not only it is the Mattel employees, is all the tier 1, tier 2, tier 3 employees, and there of course there are lots of financial institutions and media. Media takes a central role whenever there is a problem with this, very rightly so, because once the children get infected or they die because of the problems associated with the dolls, then of course the media gets into act. And so basically one has to look at all the stakeholders. Let's map the supply chain. What is the Mattel ecosystem? So the Mattel service chain is design and prototyping. That's the first. This is done at Mattel, and manufacturing, which is outsourced, and then quality control at all stages of manufacturing. So how good it is, and distribution and retail. Now the distribution and retailers are big ones like Walmart, Tesco, and others. So these are all, they basically cost control everything. And there are of course a lot of competitors for Mattel. So the product recalls could be product design troubles. There could be problems with the manufacturing like lead or the products are not done well. And of course, this quality control for any kind of materials that are used, which basically come out or which are harmful to the people, and of course, the distribution and retail. Then if you look at the sources, there are licensors and media and Chinese suppliers and toy clusters. They become very important because it's a low cost item, and the supply chain is long. In other words, the toys are made at various places in China, and finally they are shipped to the United States, particularly for seasons like Christmas and so on. And the toy clusters because all the raw materials and the people talent is available for manufacture of these toys, and human financial resources and R&D standards, R&D and standards. There is research and development for manufacture of this one, and also there is standard setting. You see what happens. One thing that happens in low cost manufacturing, when a lot of institutions are involved, and they contribute towards the product, the safety, and also the quality of the product, then standards become important. And it is also important that the standards should be, whatever the standards be, should be understood by all the players. So, in other words, what is the kind of paint you use, how long you are going to dry, what is the kind of hair, what is the color of the hair, what kind of dye you are going to use. All these are important because these are, we look at natural colors, but they are artificial colors and they could be dangerous. And if you look at the institutions, then there is Chinese and US governments and regulators. And we are going to see, particularly for this manufacturing, there is the Chinese Manufacturing Authority, which actually clears both the export and import and so on. And similarly, similar thing in the US. And quality control and environmental issues that are concerned about this. Big retailers, customers and licensors. So big retailers like Walmart, Tesco and others, they put the price pressures. And of course, there is the forward logistics, that is the movement of the material from China to United States or from various countries, one part to the other. And also, whenever there is a product recall, because the product recalls are important, and every company which is involved with either food or toys or for that matter anything where it may go wrong, the product recall becomes a big issue. And you should have the reverse logistics for product recalls in place, and most companies do not have this kind of capability. We'll go to that. Quality control and inspections. Now, the big question is whether you are going to inspect at every stage or you are going to inspect the final quality product. These are all the issues that one, and of course, retailers and promotions and parents. Parents play a big role because they are the ones who are going to buy it for the children, and parents should be advised to look at the safety features of any particular toys, but parents usually go by brand. So somebody else children has a Barbie doll, so they go for the Barbie doll, irrespective whether it is safe, it's a new design, whether the design is correct or not. People don't inspect this. So this is the kind of the ecosystem that we have. Once you have the map of the ecosystem like this, you can see when something goes wrong, who is responsible for what. In other words, for example, when there is a paint the problem, then you can immediately put the blame on Chinese suppliers, on the regulators who allowed it, and also the quality control and inspections. So, but on the other hand, more positively, if you want to improve the quality of the products, then you should inspect the suppliers, you should develop the standards, you should also have the quality control and inspectors, and also inform the regulatory authorities. But should something happen, then you should have the product recall, which is the reverse logistics, in place. So, what is the supply chain? I mean, here the Mattel supply chain is Mattel's first Barbie dolls were produced in Japan in 1959, and from Japan it has moved to China. Nowadays, Mattel has its own production facilities and maintain tight control to address the possibility of trademark infringement, because the design of the toys is trademarked. So, it is like a patent and it cannot be infringed, then people can go to court. And Mattel inspected materials when they arrived at the factory door, and suppliers were closely monitored for problems such as lead based paint, and vendors were terminated for violations. So, you can see that it is on board with various quality control. Mattel developed about 5,000 new toys each year, and new toys were produced in small batches for approval. When full scale production began, toys are inspected periodically. I think you should notice that during while the inspection of the materials and other things happen, when the full scale production happens, the toys are inspected periodically. So, this is when one has to be extremely careful when there is a full scale production and there is a lot of demand for toys. That is when the first year, second year, third year suppliers, because they do not have the material, they buy a low standard materials. And Mattel subcontracts to 30 to 50 vendors to produce non-core products and also components of core products such as fabrication, painting of eyeballs for certain dolls. So, the toy production in China in 2007, about 80% of the world's toys production were made in China, and nearly 80% of the toys coming to US were made in China. And Mattel produced about 65% of its toys in China, and most of these toys were produced in about 5,000 factories located in Guangdong district province, owned by Hong Kong entrepreneurs. And toy distribution had evolved from specialty retailers to mass market companies such as Walmart, who pressured suppliers to drive down the cost. Earlier, there used to be Toys R Us kind of shops, but now these toys are available in almost every big retail store. Mattel had moved manufacturing to China in the 1980s. So, now how does Mattel handle the supplier selection? And what does it monitor? So, factories and Mattel supply chain should procure paint and other materials from certified suppliers and follow corporate safety standards. I mean, basically this is the standard that they tell everybody. Mattel did not price pressure suppliers, particularly on paint related products. And vendors subcontracted with other suppliers who might further subcontract to other suppliers for parts or materials. So, basically this is a multi-tier supply chain, basically where you have not only tier 1 suppliers, you have tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 and so on, and finally ends up with raw materials like paint and dyes and so on. So, for instance, a company that was making a doll might subcontract certain processes such as painting the eyes to another company. That company might obtain the paint from still another supplier. So, the point is that when you have a low cost product like a doll and you have a multi-tier supply chain and the risk can emanate from any one of the suppliers, and just because it's a multi-tier, the lower rank suppliers are more prone to adulteration and use low cost materials, low quality materials than the higher this one. A, they may not be unaware, and B, they are being supplied by somebody else and then they just do it because of the cost pressures. So Mattel prohibited subcontractors using multiple layers of additional suppliers. Mattel required vendors to notify the company of all subcontract deals with the option to inspect them. So what Mattel was trying to do is basically it is aware of the lead poisoning, poisoned paint, which children, what happens is, if the hands of a particular doll or the eyes of a doll are painted with lead, and if the lead content is high, when the child puts the doll, the hand or the leg or this one, or licks the doll, then the child gets infected with the lead content, lead paint, which may lead to death. So this is the kind of this one that's why these people are aware of these kind of dangers, and so they want to put pressure on their suppliers by having inspections. And Mattel had 200 employees based in Hong Kong, whose sole responsibility was training and supervising these signing contracts. Now this is where if the product recalls had to happen, that means if there is lead poisoning somewhere or some other thing happens, then these 200 employees are responsible. Now how seriously these people take their job is under question, because when things happen. And Mattel was considered to be the best role model for how to operate prudently in China. There is a New York Times article just around 2006 putting Mattel at the top of the world in terms of how to handle as a role model for having operate prudently in China. Now because it's known that in China there are lots of problems associated with A, intellectual property, B, duplication of these materials by imitation, because when they are making the dolls, they can make the dolls for somebody else, and C, for low quality, use of low quality products. So for all these reasons, people have to be extremely careful, and Mattel, being a low cost product manufacturer, naturally has to be careful about this, and Mattel was given the role model for prudently operating in China. Retailer effect on toy manufacturers. What is the retailer effect? The retail effect on toys had consolidated, retail market has consolidated, and negotiating power of large retailers such as Walmart, Target, Toys R Us increased. That is 41% of Mattel's 2007 sales were through these people. So naturally when they are procuring from large quantities and they are putting things on sale, Christmas sale, fall sale and so on, and they basically have to put pressure on the cost. Mattel and its competitors had to continuously reduce prices in order to meet the demands of the big retailers. Now, the ones who decrease the prices are like increasing the salary of the employees. It increases year by year because their increases, and similarly the price once it comes down, it decreases year by year. So this puts pressure on Mattel suppliers to continuously cost because the retailers demand Mattel, and Mattel puts pressure on their suppliers. There were also pressures, like because it's a global FIR, global supply chain, yuan, which is the Chinese currency, it appreciated, and tax and other labor cost increases, etc. So there is a labor cost increase. Yuan appreciated, which means more dollars, and pushing costs higher with little room for cuts. And in this cost sensitive economic environment, there was little incentive for Chinese factories to increase their investments in quality programs or product testing. Now, one thing that happens in most companies, including organizations, is that whenever there is a cost and time pressure, the first thing they are going to cut is the quality checkups and the product reviews. That they think the employees can do it by themselves. So that's what these people have done. Companies relied on testing samples. Once production started, companies did not test their raw materials, even though suppliers were known to substitute less expensive materials. So what happens is the fundamental principles that Mattel used to follow: inspect the raw materials when they come to the factory, at the factory door, and you inspect the materials when they go out of the factory door. This particular thing is missed once the production has started and they are trying sample inspection of the final products. That means they take 1% of the final products and they inspect them. So this is where, because of the price pressure or whatever, they are going to, of course, Mattel has a brand name. It could have refused, saying that, look, I cannot supply it at this one. I mean, Walmart or whoever, Target has to listen to this, because the toys is a popular item with the children. So the sales of the toys is not because of Walmart, but it is because of Mattel, or the brands like Mattel and so on. So they could have negotiated well with the Target, but most people fall to the price pressures of the big retailers, because there is always, the big retailers can always get non-brand products from other contract manufacturers and put their labels. The same Barbie doll can be manufactured somewhere else without all these standards and all that, and it could probably be cheaper. And Walmart or somebody can source from those areas. So to prevent all that, these branded suppliers or branded manufacturers, they try to reduce the prices for these branded retailers. So what are the resources that we see in the resources there? Resources are the media and licensors, the suppliers, of course, the suppliers who are coming from China and so on, testing and inspection, design and R&D. Now, this design of the products, which are, in this particular case, Mattel has toys, is done at Mattel headquarters, maybe located in Hong Kong, maybe located in the United States, and there is an R&D associated with this. Now, this R&D is basically sourcing what kind of toys are selling, what are the new toys. They go to the brands like Walt Disney and others, what they are doing, what kind of toys, and so on. So, but the design of these toys, carefully, the toys which clap and make sound, the toys which run, these kind of toys, they require the batteries, they require magnets and so on. So basically these designs have to be, design of the products and the materials has to be done by some organization. So these resources are usually Mattel owned. Most of these people have the brand in their designs and the looks. So what are the regulations in this? The regulations, if you look at Administration of Quality Supervision, Inspection and Quarantine, AQSIC, is the Chinese Top Quality Control Agency. It has around 40,000 employees which regulate the products that go out of China. China enforced a nationwide product quality licensing system requiring official inspections of toys made for export. Companies exporting toys are required to apply for quality licensing. So, in other words, the companies have to say that, look, we are going to supply only quality products. They are licensed to export only under that kind of promise. In addition, of course, there are inspectors who are inspecting. And of course, one knows in China, if you are caught, then you will have problems. The Gantang District Import-Export Inspection and Quarantine Bureau keeps records of potentially dangerous materials and paints in addition to checking finished products. So, the sale and use of potentially dangerous materials like lead infected paints and so on is they keep a track of this. So, basically this particular agency, this bureau, has knowledge of who is producing these materials and who is using them and how much and for what purpose. So, it looks like in China this particular, because they are aware of these problems, and once there is problem, then the China's name gets tarnished. For that reason, they seem to be highly careful about regulating these issues, particularly in terms of the low cost products like the toys and leather goods and so on. Under the agreement signed by US Consumer Product Safety Commission, CPSC, and AQSIC, the use of lead paint in toys was prohibited. So, you cannot use lead paint in toys. The agreement also included plans to improve education of the Chinese suppliers about US safety standards, share information between US and China, and increase inspections in China. So, the point I am making here is that if you look at the regulations, there are there. But if things happen in spite of the regulations, that is, the suppliers violate, and if you have a bad design, then there is nothing regulator can do. All the regulator can regulate is about, it does not test your toys, the design is yours. But when you manufacture this particular toy in a particular this one, it ensures that the quality of the products that are used in these toys. So, what about the delivery services? Forward logistics and product recalls. The forward logistics is, of course, is the usual it goes from China to Hong Kong, and from Hong Kong or Shanghai or Hong Kong, they are shipped to the United States. There are also promotions, and of course, the parents are the ones who are going to buy the toys for the kids, and helping the suppliers, educating and supporting them. So, that is another part of the delivery services, because after all, the forward logistics is forwarding something bad. So, you should tell all the suppliers not to this one. Testing, quality control, inspections for safety, and Mattel had 200 employees based in Hong Kong whose sole responsibility is training and supervising Chinese this one. So, as far as delivery services is concerned, of course, there are forward logistics that there, and to the big retail stores like Walmart, Target and others, and of course, there are promotions and checking and quality control and all those. So, when we looked at the ecosystem for this, we have looked at the supply chain, we have looked at the regulations, we have looked at the resources, we have looked at the delivery services. So, why did the product recalls happen? In other words, we are talking of a situation when we looked at the ecosystem. because it is a toy and the case is we are looking at the safety of this product recalls. We emphasized that part or those parts where the ecosystem where the safety is guaranteed. So it's not as though you can find fault with any of these ecosystem parameters. They seem to be doing well. So the reasons for toy recalls are design problems. Now this is a general one, detachment of loose small parts. In other words, if there is a hand, the hand can come out, and if there is a magnet inside, the magnet can come out. Small powerful magnets dislodged from toys and swallowed by children, and that goes into the intestines, and then things can happen there. And there could be manufacturing problems, use of paint with lead levels exceeding 0.06%. And there is product misuse. After all, the products are being used by the children, so they are supposed to play with the toys, but they may beat the toys. They may take a stick and then beat the toys, or they can take the toys and beat it on the ground. So the children often find creative ways to play, causing detachment of parts and misuse of swallowing. They can lick it, they can swallow it, and so on. So when you are designing a particular product, if you have problems with the design, you should take who is using it. I mean, who is your potential user, who is your customer, and the designs have to be customer sensitive. That's where I think most of the problems come from the toys. And reasons for toy recalls: design problems, use of small powerful magnets in small children's toys, magnets not encased properly due to deficient designs and could become dislodged and swallowed by children. The ingested magnets would bind together across intestinal folds, continuously perforating the intestine, causing serious injury or death. The first death for this cause was reported in 2005. And parts could break off toys and cause choking in infants. And designers should ensure that toys intended for very young children did not have loose small parts, and that any part attached to the toys, such as roses, eyes of stuffed animals, or buttons, could not be detached. What are the manufacturing problems in this? One recurrent problem is the use of lead paint. Lead was commonly used as paint in 1970s. Paint with lead levels exceeding 0.6 were banned in the US for residential and consumer use. The companies manufacturing in China put processes in place to prevent the use of lead paint on their products. There were many possible reasons for use of lead paints. Why do people use lead paint? Paint with lead costs 30 to 60% less than paint with lead than without lead. Use of unapproved suppliers, falsified certification of documents by suppliers. You can, how do you know this one? I mean, the supplier is going to supply from somebody saying that it is a good paint, it has less than 0.06%. Then that happens. So what about the product misuse? Children often find creative ways to play that were not anticipated by the designers. Cards that could wrap around the child's neck, features in which child's head could get stuck and potentially cause strangulation. So let's look at Mattel 2007. What happened there? On August 2nd, 2007, Mattel announced a voluntary recall of Fisher-Price products sold from May to August 2007. On August 14th, Mattel issued a second voluntary recall involving 436,000 toys worldwide, 253,000 of which were in the US. More recalls on September 4th. The reason: toys were produced using a non-approved paint pigment containing lead. That was the reason that was given by Mattel. And in fact, it was not Mattel, but from August onwards, August 2000 onwards, there were media, this one, I mean, some of these companies were saying that it is lead paint, and Chinese suppliers were banned and all that. But on September 21st, Mattel announced that vast majority of the recalled toys, 17.4 million, had been due to loose magnets. That's because of the defective designs, while a much smaller number, 2.2 million, were related to manufacturing defects, excessive lead. So, the fact is, of course, that both are at faulty. Metal design was not good because it has designs which are unsafe for kids, and also it has parts which are loose, and particularly those parts were magnets, and children can swallow the magnets, and that could be dangerous for them. And the other one is 2.2 million dolls had manufacturing, has excessive lead. So, how do you do the risk management? Let's come to this issue here. In other words, it's a general issue in outsourced manufacturing. So, prototype testing for design failures. Would this be safe? Would this toys be safe? Does it have small parts, sharp edges, long strings, holes, gaps, uses or chemicals that may be harmful? Would the toy be held up in the use of abuse or misuse? Does this toy break easily? If so, does it generate small parts, sharp edges, long strings, etc.? What are the most unexpected ways in which a child can play? Does the fact that testers' colleagues made the design and prototype influence the error reporting? Testers' colleague made the design and prototype influence the error reporting, or the test reports taken seriously? So, basically the issue goes all the way from designers to the people who test it and who certify it and so on. This is at Mattel. And Mattel must ensure that its multi-tier supply chain meets its standards. As the supply chain adds levels, it becomes increasingly impossible to inspect the lower tiers. These companies work in the thin margins and the lack of size and financial pressures to invest in quality improvements. It's essential that Mattel's first-tier suppliers recognize the importance of product safety and integrity, and their performance be consistent with Mattel's expectation. The recognition would then need be passed on to each successive tier of the supplier. In fact, when the product recall happened, the companies that were involved with the Mattel, they are very good companies, and Mattel had a very long-standing relationship with them. But the fact of the matter is, those companies have subcontracted to somebody who basically had this problem. So, a third party supply chain monitor may also be considered. Now, here, see, the point is, can you have an orchestrator who could do the entire monitoring for you, a third party? And where should he be placed? And what should he monitor? Are you monitoring usually the orchestrator monitor the product manufacture and delivery to the suppliers. This is like Li and Feng and others. But here, we are looking at monitoring the quality control, so of various suppliers. So, this is a part of the procurement of this. So, you should not only the monitor, the third party should not only know the quality product for each of these products, how they can be diluted or how they can be poisoned, and who are the suppliers, where they are manufactured, what is the relationship between the tiers of suppliers between them, are they in the same area. So, this is the kind of country knowledge and the village and the town knowledge that is needed by the orchestrator. So, once that is needed, then when you are going towards to a particular manufacturer or a supplier, then you can basically caution him, saying that look, you are in the vicinity of this particular high lead paint. So, if you use it, then you will have problems. If you have any problems, if you cannot procure, please tell us, we will procure it for you. So, this is the kind of mentorship that is needed here. So, product recalls always happens. That's because whenever there is a sale, there is a possibility of recall. Risk analysis of possible happenings on design, manufacturing, product use, failures and actions in each case, and appropriate governance structure should be in place for product recalls. Learned from Red Cross, media advertising, information through retailers and so on. So, to conclude this, we have talking about the multi-tier supply chain partner selection and risk management. And there are big issues, multi-tier supplier partner selection as well as multi-tier risk management are big issues in globally dispersed supply chains. I mean, there are issues in any outsourced supply chain, whether it is local or global. It is more global in the sense, if everybody is in the United States, everybody is from the same country, then everybody is aware of the local laws. The governing agency, the controlling agency is the same. The cost pressures won't be there because everybody is at the same page. But here, when you are outsourcing and people are from different countries, then the risk management becomes an issue. And also, if it is a low cost product, then it becomes much more. Design for manufacturing, zero defect production, customer safety are all hallmarks of manufacturing in the 70s. So, when people were talking of vertically integrated manufacturing, then people were talking of design for manufacturing, zero defect production, customer safety and so on. These are all they are taken for given. But what happened in globally dispersed manufacturing? So, since everybody is in the same country and the same page, they are all educated for zero defect production, design for manufacturing and all the customer safety and all that. But when these are dispersed, the same thing doesn't happen. Managing accountability in long global supply chains is a difficult challenge. And particularly, this becomes much more difficult. It becomes much more difficult when the product that is involved is low cost, like toys or like food or anything that is low cost, about $10–15, and also it is marketed through big retailers. Whatever may the brand, when it is marketed through big retailers and all that, there is a lot of cost pressures, and the cost pressures, they go down the chain from the retailers to the manufacturers to the suppliers and so on. And suppliers don't want to lose the market or the order, and they try to do other things like adulteration, like contamination, or source it from somebody who is cheap and use cheaper products and so on. So, how do long dispersed supply chains ensure the above issues are not compromised? In other words, inspections, of course, they cost a lot of money, and there is always corruption in the inspections. communications, telling everybody what should be, and of course supply chain visibility. Now supply chain visibility has problems because the low cost suppliers, particularly tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4 and so on, they may not be available on the internet, and they may not have this kind of visibility that they need. And of course collaboration incentives of low cost, this MX way, and what else. So there are issues here about this. Of course, one fundamental thing is, why are you manufacturing these products using these? Why should a toy should have a paint at all? When you know, in other words, one thing that designers could consider is to remove all the products which are all the elements in the design, which could be, why should you use magnets in this? So there are several ways in which one can look at it. It depends on the product, it depends on the country, it depends on various issues. So that's where we stop, and then we'll see it later. What governance structure do you suggest for low product supply chains, this MX way and so on?